Everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which is going to be focused on adding tags to our Django models with Django Taggit, and we're also going to look at how we can integrate Tailwind components, otherwise referred to as Tailwind Essentials from Tailwind CSS, and we're also going to look at how we can add in HTMX as well. So let's get started. So here is the Django Taggit documentation, and all of the relevant links I will refer in the description of this particular video tutorial. So the documentation for Taggit, the elements here for Tailwind, and the cards that we'll also utilize. So it's all going to be in reference in the description below. Okay, so I'm going to do this from scratch. So we're going to do this all from the beginning. Now I will be sure to add timestamps in this video so you can skip ahead to the relevant areas that you want to focus upon. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm just going to create a Django project the way that I usually go and create it. Of course, if you have a different way of doing so, you're more than welcome to do just that. So I'm just going to create a folder on my desktop called this dev. Let me open up my CMD. Okay, and I'm just going to adjust it nicely here. Okay, and let me go into that folder. So I'll say CLS. On a macOS terminal, you'll type in clear if you want to clear everything. And I'm going to say cd desktop/dev. And that's going to put me in the directory and clear that up. Now we want to ensure that we create a virtual environment. Now I typically use the old-fashioned way of virtual env. So I'm going to say pip install virtual env. So I already have it on my system, so this is just kind of clarity for those that are strictly following along step by step. So I just want to ensure I have that installed globally on my system so that I can create virtual environments so I don't need to install every single package globally. Right, so it's been installed. Then I can just go on ahead and create a virtual environment in my dev folder here. So I'll say virtual env space, and then the name of my virtual environment, which I'm going to call it as venv. So very simple. Okay, so let's wait for that. And then we'll continue once that has been set up. All right, so our virtual environment has been created. So let's clear this up, and then we can refer to it with the name we gave it, so venv. So I want to say /scripts /activate. And here we can see within parentheses, we are within our virtual environment now. Great. Now we can install Django. So I'm going to say pip install Django. So let's go ahead and do just that. So we just want to wait for that to be installed. Okay, so we can now see Django has been installed. Perfect. So now that we have Django installed, let's create our Django project. So I'm going to say Django-admin start project. I'll just call this Elevate. Very simple. Okay, then I'm going to say cd elevate to go into that project and clear. All right, so now I'm just going to open up Visual Studio Code. Let's open that up. And then I want to see my project a little bit clearer by opening up my dev folder. Okay, there we go. So I'll just zoom in a tad bit. So we can see it's already opened up for us. So what I'm actually going to do to make this easier, in case you don't see it, you can go and click on the top, go to File, Open Folder, and go to Desktop, and then select Dev here, and then you can open that up. And then it will have this for you here. Okay, so we're currently within Elevate here, as we can see. So dev elevate, great. And we just want to run manage.py so that we can just access our application. So now I'm just going to say Python manage.py run server. Okay, there we go, and we can see it's now running. We can see it generated that default SQLite database as well. So now what we can do is I'm just going to copy the following. So localhost, and I'm just going to create a new tab here and just replace it. And there we go, we have Django set up and good to go. Okay, let's continue. So now we want to go on ahead and set up our Django app. We'll set up a template directory, index.html file with a basic URL and view, just to show hello world. So we just want to have the bases covered. Okay, so the next thing that we want to go ahead and do is create our Django app. So we can stop our server, and I'm just going to say python manage.py start app, and I'm going to call this, let's call this CRM. Okay, there we go. And we can now see that we have CRM, so that's our app. Then I want to go to Elevate and to my settings.py file. Just remove this. And what I'm going to do is just scroll down. And here installed apps, I'm just going to add CRM to the list here. So I just want to register my Django app. That's all I want to do here. So we now have that registered, and we are now good to continue. All right, so now what we want to do is create a templates directory now. So what I'm going to do is go to CRM, right click, say new folder, and I'm going to call this templates. So we're doing app level template handling. And within this file, I just want to right click on it again and say new file, and I'm going to call this index.html. So we'll just create something very simple here. Add in the header tag as well. I'll just add in a title that says website. And then I'll just say here, hello world. So it's something very simple for now. So make sure that you have that set up into place. So I'll just make this a bit clearer to see. Okay. So we then have that directory set. Next thing that we're going to do is create a urls.py file here in CRM. So I'm going to right click, say new file. We can call this urls.py. Okay. And what we want to do is essentially we want to ensure that we link this urls.py file in our main urls.py file for Elevate here. So we're going to open that up. So let's just remove these comments. Okay, there it's gone. And here we can see that's in CRM, our app. So at the app level or CRM, we have urls.py, and in our main project level URLs, we have this here. Okay. Now what we want to do is just include all the URLs that we will define here and register in the main urls.py file. So to do that, we need to make use of the include function here. And then we can say pass, and I'm going to leave that blank. And I want to say include all of the URLs from CRM. So I'll say CRM, which is at the app, and then urls.py. So we're going to say .urls. And then just be sure to add in a comma at the end there. Just going to ensure that it's easy to route accordingly here. Okay. All right, perfect. So now that you have that set up, we can go back to our urls.py file. And we can open up our views.py file. And now all that we want to do is we want to set up our URL here. And then we want to set it up in our views.py file as well and link it. Now, just to get the default logic that we had before, we can just quickly reopen the main urls.py file, copy everything here, paste it here. And we don't need admin. Okay, and what we can do is just remove that. We have the path. And what we want to do is define a very simple view now. So let's do that. So we can go to our views.py file and say dev, and I'm going to call this, let's say home, pass through the request, and we can say return, render, and we want to ensure that it is going to be the index.html file, and that is essentially what we want to render at our home page here. So we just want to render this file, and we're just ensuring that we've set that up in our views.py file so that we can render the index.html file on our home page, and that's going to be linked to the URL here that we have set. So what I'm going to do is remove this, and we want to import everything from our views.py file. So I'm going to say from.import views. And we can say views.home. And that's going to ensure that we are able to access this index.html file. So we can just say python manage.py run server. Okay, and reload, and there we go, we have hello world. So we've got everything set up. We have that our basic Django project from scratch with our Django app. We've got the basic routing on one template set up with our URL, our index.html file, and everything being rendered. So this is being returned accordingly, as we can see from our urls.py file in CRM, and we can see that path is working correctly. So it's just at the default path here, as you can see at localhost. Okay. So that's the basics that we need to do. So hopefully those that are following along strictly, you've got everything that you need. And for those that skipped ahead, of course, you can go on further if you'd like now. So that's just the basis. Okay, so we have that now all set up, and we can now go ahead and continue with the main and essential part of this video. All right, now the next thing you want to do is create a very simple model. So what I'm going to do is go to my CRM app. Let's go to models.py, and I'm going to create a model here. So I'm going to go on ahead and base this off a sport model with a number of sports. So let's say football, rugby, cricket, etc. And I'm going to say class sport would be an appropriate model name. And I'm going to pass through models.model. It's going to allow us to create our custom model. Then I want to specify the attribute. So I'm going to keep it very simple, and I'm just going to set one attribute for the name of the sport. I'm going to say models.char field as the data type. The max length here, I'm going to set that as 255 characters. Then I want to set up a string dunder message. So that's going to ensure when the objects are created, for example, in the Django admin, we'll see it as the actual name of the sport itself according to the instance. So I can say def _string. And within parentheses, I can pass through self. So then return self.name, and that's going to ensure it shows the name of each instance of that object accordingly in our Django admin. Right, so that's all that you need. You can also make this about other things, maybe TV, movies, any sort of aspect of life that's categorized in a particular fashion. Okay, so now I'm going to stop my server. And I want to make my migrations for my sport model. So I'm going to say python manage.py make migrations. So it's created now the model sport. Then I want to push it to my SQLite database. So I'll say python manage.py migrate. And as you can see on the default, it's also going to make all of the default migrations that are part of this new Django project that I've created, as you can see. But the one that we are, of course, need to keep in mind here is that it will migrate everything within now our CRM app. Okay, great. So everything's been migrated now. Now we can register this model. So if we go to our CRM app, we can see we have an admin.py file. Let's register that here. So we can just simply import that model, which is called sport. So we can just say from .models import sport. Then we can say admin.site.register, pass through sport there, and that's going to register sport for us. Great. So now we just want to keep it simple and create a super user and log in to view the sport model with its associated field. So we can go to our terminal and say python manage.py, create super user. And I'm going to say this is honor, add in a password. There we go. Now let's run our server. All right. Now we can go to our admin. So you can just type /admin, and now we can enter in our super user credentials that we just created to view our model. All right. So once you've entered in your super user credentials, you can go ahead and log in. And now we can see under the CRM app, we have a sport model. We click on that and say add sport. So adding an object, we can see we have that field that we defined called name. Okay. So there we have it. That is the essentials for setting up our model, making our migrations, registering the model, creating the super user, and how to log in and view that particular model, and how we can create an object. Okay, so now let's focus on Django Taggit. All right, so as we can see here, Django Taggit is a reusable Django application, and that's designed to make adding tagging to our project a lot more easier and fun. So let's go ahead and say get started. And we want to first of all go on ahead and install Django Taggit. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the following. And I'm just going to say pip install Django Taggit within my virtual environment. So let's go ahead and do just that. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, perfect. So let's have a look at what's next. Next, we need to add Taggit to our project's installed apps. So let's go ahead and do just that. So we can go ahead and copy the following, Taggit. Let's go to our settings.py file now. And I'm just going to add in the quotes either side and ensure it's now registered now with installed apps. Okay, great. Now, of course, we can run manage.py migrate, so we can, of course, do that, but we'll do that in just a moment. The next thing I just want to explain is what we have set up here. So we're then going to add any model that we want to have tagging initiated upon. So here they're using the class food as an example. So we're going to add in this line of code here, which I'll explain in a moment. So you can copy that and go to models.py, add that here. So essentially what we're doing here is we're importing Taggable Manager, and Taggable Manager is, so Taggable Manager is essentially a Django field manager from our Taggit library, as we can see, and that's going to let you attach tags to a model, and it's also going to provide very simple methods available if we want to remove, add, or query these tags without us having to manually handle the database relationships itself. So that is what we are adding here. Then we need to actually add in the tags field to our model here with our field / attributes. So here we can see we have tags equals Taggable Manager. So we can copy the following there, and we can just paste it down below here and have that set. Okay, now this essentially adds a field to our model that's going to allow us to easily just assign, remove, list our tags for each instance that we create of the object. So it's basically like a many-to-many field that's in place so that we can actually query accordingly. All right. So that is what we need to ensure that we have. And of course, you can add this to as many models as you would like and such. Okay, so we can see that's the full code that we would need to have in place. Now we can actually migrate the model. So we can say Python manage.py migrate. And there we go. Perfect. So the migration has been completed. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to add in the case insensitive setting here. So when we're looking up tags here, we can decide if we want the case insensitive to be true or false. So by default, it is set to false, of course, implying that it is going to be sensitive. Okay, and we don't want that. We want just it to be roughly. So we can just set Taggit case insensitive to true. So we can copy the following, go to settings.py, and I'm just going to put it right here outside of the list of my installed apps. So Taggit case insensitive to true. If you want it to, of course, not be the case, you can just leave it as is, or you can explicitly put it as false if you desire. It's really up to you. Okay, so we've got that set up and into place. So let's go on ahead and continue now. So we want to now go on ahead and create a few objects and then assign tags to them. But what I want to do is actually refresh because we haven't seen that new field that we added, which was technically tags. So I'll just refresh here. And here we can see we now have associated with our sport model. We can see we have a sport model, we have that name field that we had before, and now we have tags, and you can see here a comma separated list of tags. So it's kind of like adding in metadata in a sense of, for example, if you have a sport, you'll have a sport called maybe football, and then the tags there you can say it is part of a ball category. It's a ball sport. And we can also have tags there, like perhaps a favorite football team or something like the sort. And then you'll just add in commas the list of tags that you want, or you can just add in one tag. You don't need to add in multiple tags. Okay, so let's go on ahead and add in a few objects. Now you can of course skip ahead if you don't want to watch it, but I think it's always best to just see how I do it, just so you can follow along and just so you can have a better understanding. So let's go on ahead and do that together. All right, so let's get started. So sports. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started with football. Tags. Okay, I'm going to put in ball, comma, let's say soccer, the other way of saying it, and I'm just going to say save. So we can now see that under the sport model we have an object here, and we can see the name is showing as football. And again, that's because in our models we define the string dunder method here to return the object, the instance of the object's name here, instead of object 1, etc., object 2, and we can see we have football. Let's click on that. We can now see we have the name and the tags ball and soccer. And here under the Taggit app that we installed externally, if we go to that and go to tags, we can see here that we have two fields, so a name field, and we can see we have ball and soccer, and the slug, ball and soccer as well. Okay, let's go back to sports. Now, not for each object, I'm at least going to add in one tag, and that's going to be important when we do the filtering, so that I'd recommend you just follow on exactly as I do. I'm not going to add in tags, multiple tags for each object that we create, so do keep that in mind. Right, next we have rugby, and it's going to be under ball. Okay, and that's also going to be housed the same. So if we go to tags, you can see there that it's still going to have one instance of a tag. It's not going to duplicate. There won't be duplication. It will be all under one particular filter, you could say, when we add in the filtering. Okay, so we have rugby. I can say cricket. This ball. Save. Okay, we're just going to add quite a couple here. I'm also going to add in marathon, and that's going to be under endurance. Okay, let's add in cycling. You can just say endurance as well. Okay, we've got a few here. Let's add in another one. Triathlon, that will be under endurance as well. Okay, let's add in tennis. That will be racket, so racket sports. And add another one. Let's add in badminton. That will be also under racket. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we've got 8 objects, so that's quite enough. So as you can see, for each of them, we have at least one tag. The only one that has more is football here, and that's just going to be for demonstration purposes. Okay, so make sure you've gone ahead and added in those sports here. So again, if you missed it, of course, I'm just going to go through them quickly. So badminton, we can see the tag is racket. Tennis, we can see racket as well. Triathlon under endurance. Cycling under endurance. Marathon under endurance. Cricket ball, so cricket ball, rugby, rugby ball, and football, of course ball, and we have soccer. Okay, so there we have it categorized. Great. So the next thing we want to do is we just want to work a bit with Django Taggit in the shell. So there are a few things I do want to show you. So we are also going to refer to what we have here with our objects. So let's stop our server and let's get started. So Django Taggit in the Django shell. Now, if we go to the documentation here, there isn't, of course, much here in terms of the terminal, but from knowledge here, I am going to go through it with you here. So let's actually get to it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you is how you can retrieve the first sport object from our database. So to do that, we want to go into the Django shell. So I'm going to say python manage.py shell. Okay, and that's going to take me to the shell. You can see the 3 dashes here. So let's make this a bit bigger and move that just like that so you can see. So we want to retrieve the first sport from our database. So I'm just going to create a variable called sport equals, and I'm going to say, let's go ahead and say sport, which is the model name dot objects dot first. And then if we type in sport, you can see there it's going to return football, because that was the first object that we created, which was football down here, as you can see. So that's how we can retrieve the first sport from our database. Let's say we want to view the tag manager object. So the tag manager object is of course based on this field that we added here to our model sport. So if we were to add that in, so we can just refer to that by saying sport.tags. And that's going to refer to that task manager object, which was appended here, as we can see, according to the field. Next, we want to query all the associated tags with the sport that we have assigned to this variable, which of course we can see is football. So as we know, football has 2 tags. So if I were to say sport.tags.all, we can see in a query set it's going to return ball and soccer. And to confirm this, if we go to football, okay, we can't see that right now. Okay, so as you know, we defined ball and we also defined soccer. Okay, so we're saying sport.tag, so we're looking at how can I say it's the tags associated with that sport, which is football, and we're saying all of them. So that's how you can query all the associated tags. If you want to query the first associated tag, which of course in this case we can see is ball, all we need to do is say sport.tags.first, the first method, and that's just going to give us ball, as we can see here. Okay. Right, now you're probably wondering, okay, how can I get the specific tag name according to the name attribute? So to do so, we can say sport.tags.first and .name. Okay, and that's going to give you, out of this tag object here, it's just going to print out ball here. It's going to extract it. Let's say you want to extract now you want to get the specific tag slug according to the slug attribute. So you do something similar. You would say sport.tags.first.slug. And of course, that's going to get the slug here as well. Okay, so remember those 2 fields in the Taggit model that I showed you. That is what we are essentially getting now. Okay. Now, let's say we want to return all of the tag names with the names method. So very simple. We can just go ahead and say sport.tags.names with the names method. And of course, there we get it, ball and soccer. Okay, great. So what we can also do is return a specific tag according to indexing. So we can do the same thing we did before, but just put in the indexing of 0 here, and that's just going to get ball itself. So that's how you can integrate indexing in order to just get the first particular instance. If you wanted to get the second one, you put 1, and that's going to give you soccer. So remember, when you're working in like a dictionary environment, it always starts with 0. So 0 will be the first instance, 1 will technically be the second instance. So that's how you can retrieve the second name, which would be soccer in this case. Okay. So that's how you can use indexing. Now we can also add tags to our object as well. So as we know, if we were to just say sport.tags.names, that gives us the query set of ball and soccer. Let's say we wanted to add in more tags. So I'm going to add in a football club, for instance. So I'll say sport.tags.add. You want to use the add method. And here in parentheses, in quotes, we can, for example, just say Man City, short for Manchester City, just like that. enter, and then you want to view all your tags again. So you can say sport.tags.all. And here we can see we have the tag ball, tag soccer, and tag Man City. Okay, so that's how you can view all our tags. And of course, if you want to do it by names again, you can say sport.tags.names. If you want to see it a bit more concisely, you can see in the query set ball, soccer, Man City. Now, let's say you want to remove a tag from your selected object. We can just say sport.tags.remove, and then you need to put in the exact tag name. So if I want to remove Man City, I put in Man City, and just like that, it will go to a new line if it's a success, of course. And we can just say sport.tags.all to see all of the tags. And here we can just see ball and soccer have been associated. Okay. All right, so now let's look at filtering. So if you want to filter all sports according to a tag name. So remember the tag names. We had ball, we had endurance, and we also had racket. So what we can do is refer to the sport model. So we can see the model name here is sport. So we can just say sport.objects.filter, and we can add tags _name equals, and here you want to put in the name. So here I'm going to say endurance, and I'm just going to say enter. And there you go, you can see it's going to output that accordingly. So it's going to output all of the sports with the tag of endurance, and that it will include marathon, cycling, and triathlon. Let's do it now according to racket. So now it's going to output all the racket sports and filter to that. So we have tennis and we have badminton. Then, of course, if we want it to be anything with a ball involved, so the cricket ball, rugby ball, football, we just put in ball, and that's going to filter according to football, rugby, and cricket. Okay, so we have that in place. Now, you can also filter all sports according to the tag name in terms of using the exclude option instead of filter. So let's say you want to get every sport except a particular sport according to its category or tag. So I want to see all the sports except the endurance sports. So what I can do, let me scroll down here. I can then just say, just move this a bit up. We can say sport.objects.exclude, and then we're going to say tags _name, and I want to exclude all the endurance sports. And here you can see it's going to output football, rugby, cricket, tennis, badminton. So everything except endurance, which we set to exclude. Okay, so that is how we can go ahead and just work in the shell and utilize tagging with Django Taggit. The next thing I want to show you is, of course, how we can add tags to our admin list page, just to make it a little bit cleaner and such. Okay, so we can just say exit here, blank parentheses, clear this up, and let me readjust. We can say python manage.py run server. Yeah, let's just wait. Okay, and refresh here. Okay, and we're good to where we were. So just to re-emphasize here, of course, we had the names that we had set up, and we have the slugs as well. Okay. Right, so the next thing that I want to do is go back to where we were, and I want us to continue with the admin list page and such. So welcome back. So let's continue. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we dive into adding tags to the admin list page is I noticed that the Man City tag is, of course, still in the tag table. However, if we were to go to sports, go to football, okay, we can see that the tag is no longer associated with the sport object. Okay, but the tag, of course, still exists. So what you can do, of course, is you can go ahead and select that particular tag, go to action, say delete, select the tag and delete it. Okay, so that's just a bit of a nuance that I do want to mention here. It does remove it from, of course, any association here with the object. However, you do need to do a hard delete here in the tag model here. So just something to keep in mind. Right, so adding tags to the admin list page. So if we were to refer to the documentation with using tags in the admin, okay, we can see here a rough overview of how we can set that up. So we do need to create a custom admin class here, as we can see, for our model, and we will need to add in a list display. And then what we can do here is we can refer to a method here, which we're using in the list display to list out all of the associated objects. Okay, so before we attempt something like that, let's go to admin.py. We can comment out the following for now, and let's create a custom admin for our model. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my, of course, @ symbol, and I'm going to say admin.register, and then we're going to pass through our sport model that we want to register. Then we'll create our custom model admin class, and I'm going to say class, and I'm going to call this sport admin. We're going to pass through admin.modeladmin. Then what you want to do is add in a list display now. And for the time being, I just want it to be name, just like that. So now what's going to happen, we go to our model here. So sports, let's go there and refresh. Okay, so not much has really been adjusted here. So we can see we have badminton, tennis, triathlon, cycling, etc. If I were to just, let's comment this out and use the default. Let's restart our server. And refresh it. We can see that there is not much of a difference here. We just have the names. Okay, so what I want to do now is go back. Okay, back to what we had before now. And I want to define the method here for my tags now. So to simplify this, all we can do is go on ahead and copy the following message here. So tag list. Make sure it's in line with list display, like that. Okay, and all we need to do is add in a comma here and then add in tag list. So now if we go to our models, we can now see that it's now showing, apart from the names itself, we can see the tag list here. So we can see what they are part of. So badminton is part of racket, tennis racket, triathlon endurance, cycling endurance, marathon endurance, cricket, ball, rugby ball, football, ball, and soccer. So that's the only one that has, of course, additional tags. So that's just how you can add in a list display here. Now, of course, this is pertaining on the method name. You can change this if you wish. You can just say tag category and just make sure that coincides with the method name that's here. Okay, let's just refresh here. Okay, and there we go. So here we can see we've got the tag category if you want to change it up. So all this does is it's just going to return all of the tags for the associated objects that we have here. And if there are more tags there, what it's going to do is just join them up. And of course, separate them accordingly per object on the object basis. Okay, so that's adding tags to your admin list page. Okay, you don't need to do it. That's just something optional that you can do, but that's how we can do just that. Okay, right, so we've got that set up now. The next thing that we want to, of course, do is we want to access our tags and we want to see our objects in our view. So that's the next thing that we're going to want to do. So let's see if we're logged in yet. So we can just log out the Django admin. Let's go back, and we now want to access it in this format here. We want to access it on our website. We want to see it visually. So we're going to render our objects, render our tags, and everything. So now let's focus on accessing tags in our view. So what we can do is we can close our settings.py, admin.py, models.py, and let's open up our views.py file. Okay, here we are. And we can also open up our index.html file here on the right. Okay, so we have our views.py file. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and import the tag model. So essentially what we can do is first of all import our native model. So that's going to be the sport model. So we can say from .models import sport. Then we can import the tag model. So we can say from Taggit .models import tag. Okay, we can also adjust them nicely like that. Okay, now the next thing that we want to go on ahead and do is we want to get all the sport objects from our database and then load their related tags in advance so that they can be accessed more efficiently without any extra queries. So we're going to add some nuance to it. So we can first of all just assign it to sports. Then we can refer to the model that we imported called sport. And then you just want to say dot objects. And then we're going to say dot prefetch underscore related. And in quotes, we'll say tags and we'll say dot all was the all method. Now, in terms of the prefetch related aspect here, if we look in the documentation, let's go getting started. Of course, we can see if I can just find where it was in documentation. Okay, it doesn't seem to show it here. Okay. Right, so essentially speaking, the general idea was when we're prefetching it here, it's just to ensure that we can load them in advance. That is the main idea that we are doing here. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to get all the tag objects from our database, so quite straightforward. So we'll say tags and then refer to the tag model that we imported. So we're going to say tag dot objects dot all. There we have it. And then we want to apply this all to our context dictionary. So the key that we will refer in our index.html page, we're going to say sports, and that pertains to the value here of sports here. And then we also have tags, which will be the key that we'll refer to in our index.html file, which pertains to the value of tags, which is right here. Okay. Then we want to ensure that that is accessible in our index.html file. So we'll pass through context, just like that. So we'll be able to access everything accordingly. So now if we go to our index.html file, I'm going to remove hello. Oh, actually, I can just replace it and say sports. And I'll put in a horizontal line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all in a unordered list, UL. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and pass through in a for loop all of the necessary objects. I'll say for sport in sports. And that is pertaining to this particular key, which is associated to the following value based on what we are defining here. And what I'm going to do right after that is I'm going to create a list here. So I'm going to say list item, so li, and we're going to output the sport names. I'll say sport.name. So remember that's the field on the sport model that we've defined. And then right below that, I want to put in the necessary tags. I'm going to say for tag in sport.tags.all. So I want to ensure that I output all those tags. And to do that, I'm just going to put in a simple paragraph tag here. That's just going to have tag, just like that. And then I just want to end this for loop. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is also end the outer for loop, which is right here for getting all the sport objects. So I can say end for. Right, there we go. Perfect. So we can just make sure our server's running. And there we go. We can see all the sports. We can see, okay, we've got football. We got our tags here. So ball, soccer, ball, endurance, etc. We have all of that. Okay, perfect. So we have that in place. Now you can also make this smaller just by putting in small. You can just make it a bit more concise, I guess. And there we have it. So you can just tighten it up a bit. Now what we can do is, for our main filter, we want to categorize according to the tags themselves. So of course we have ball, we have endurance, of course racket, etc. And we want it to be according to the name. So let's go ahead and do just that. So we can go up, and I want this to be, let's put a horizontal line down here, and I just want it to be set here. So I'll add in a paragraph tag. Did this nicely, and I'm going to say for tag in tags, and then I'll put in tag.name, and we'll say end for, just like that. And then if we were to reload, we can see here we've got the main tags here, so ball, soccer, endurance, and racket. And of course our goal is to ensure that these are clickable, and we want to see the result down here. But before we can go ahead and do that, what we want to do is we want to make this cleaner. So we're going to style everything with Tailwind CSS, and we're going to utilize Tailwind elements to help us do this. Right, but that is the fundamentals that you need to have in place. That's how you can utilize Django Taggit. Everything else is now going to be focused on styling, and then usability with the filtering in terms of HTMX. All right, so let's go on ahead and style everything with Tailwind CSS. So as we can see, it doesn't look that great. Let's improve this. So you can head on over to tw-elements.com. Again, this will be in the description of the video, so you can go on ahead and head straight to it. Now, in order for the elements to work, such as buttons, for example, we need to ensure that we have the correct CDNs in place. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and paste them in. Now, of course, this code will be available in its entirety in the GitHub repository. And what I'll also do is I'll pin this in the comment as well if you just want to quickly copy and paste as you follow along. So you can copy that. And here in our header section, you can just go ahead and paste that in. I'm just going to adjust it there. So now we have it. So just to simplify what we're doing here, so the first script, just cdn Tailwind CSS. So it just loads the Tailwind CSS from a CDN so that we can use its utility classes for styling. And then here specifically what we're doing in the second line of code is we're loading TW elements, so Tailwind elements. So this is, you could say, extra ready-made Tailwind components, and that styles so you can use things like model, carousels, etc. Okay, so we have that in place. So now on the TW Elements website, you want to type in buttons, so like that. Okay, then we can scroll down and we can see we have a sample button here. So this is what it will look like. So you want to say show code, and then we can copy this, head on straight to our index.html file. And what I'm going to want to do is adjust it. So I am going to just clean everything up. So we can just, we can add it in the paragraph itself. That's fine. And we can just add in this button here. You might want to just indent nicely. And you can see here it's going to output button here as the default text. So if we go back, refresh, we can see it's kind of a mess now because we've applied Tailwind CSS and it just shows button because we haven't looped it. So if we were to encapsulate this for loop within the button, it will, of course, and just nest it. You can see here it will show 4 buttons, which is, of course, how many tags here we have, but we want these tags to be on the buttons themselves. So here you can see the text for button. You can remove that and just go ahead and replace the tag name itself within that, and then on the button, it's going to show ball, soccer, endurance, and racket, and that's exactly what we want. So we have these categories. And of course, our end goal with HTMX is if we select a particular category or tag, it's going to adjust here and filter what we have accordingly. So the next thing we actually want to do is we want this all to be a bit cleaner and a bit tighter. So what I'm going to actually do is, let's just see what we have. So sports, yeah, we can encapsulate everything. So here from sports, we can put everything in a div, and I'm going to set this to div class, and let's start off at M5. So that's just going to tighten everything nicely for us. So I'll put everything in there up until that last ending of the unordered list, and then it'll be the closing div of M5. So reload. Okay, it's a lot cleaner. What I want to do now is, we can see we've got the horizontal lines here, but I want to add in a space for that sports heading here. Just put that there. Okay, and we can also put a heading just after the horizontal line as well. So this is just some personal preference here. So we can see we've got that nicely in place. What you can also do is just replace and adjust where you want the headings and such to be, but that has just got everything in place now to look a bit nicer. Okay, next we want to use a Tailwind CSS card from FlowByte. Okay, and that's just going to make everything here a lot more concise and cleaner. So here we have a simple card here on the website, and here we have the code nicely already set for us, so we can just copy that, and that's going to pertain to what we have in this unordered list here. So what I'm going to do is, I need to adjust this cleanly here. So we have our sport name, and then we have our tags here in its for loop. Right, so let's go on ahead and adjust this. So what I want to do is just paste the necessary code in place here. So what I'm going to do is add in this list. So I'll add it in here at the top, and leaves it there. So it's going to look all over the place at the moment, but this is the general gist of what you want to do. Now we just need to add in our data within these cards here. So what we're going to want to do is just observe carefully where we can add it. So we have a paragraph class here. We can just remove this. We don't need that. Go. All right, we have a trailing S, and we can put in sport name now within this A tag. Let's see, no, actually the H5 tag should be where it would be. So we can just remove this list here, and we can put sport name in place of this here. So we'll put sport dot name here by the H5 tag. So now if we go back and refresh, we can now see the categories are there, but the tags are missing. We want the tags to be in it as well. So let's go ahead and do just that. So let's adjust it. So what we can essentially do is we can just remove this small tag. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to move it within the A tag itself. So let's move this within, like that. So we want it to be on the card itself. Can leave the for loop outside. Okay, and we're just going to put this in a small class. So I'm going to say small class here. I'm just going to say text white. And there we go. Just indent that, and we can just now indent all of these. So now if we zoom out here, we can see we have our for loop outside, looping every sport object along with within it its own tag, and that's part of the for loop as it loops all of the additional cards here. So now if I reload, we can now see we have football, we can see rugby, we can see cricket, we can see marathon, cycling. Now we can also put in like a space next if there's additional tags just afterwards. So we can see it just looks a bit cleaner in that regard. Okay, so we have our objects, and we have, as we can see down below, we can see that additional information just appearing there as the tags and the comma trailing afterwards. Okay, also just going to add in a space here. So it's zoom in. So we have our small tag. I'm just going to put in a breakpoint at the end here, like that. and that's just going to give a gap here. So you just want to add in that breakpoint just above your end for loop, and that's just going to make everything a bit cleaner. There are other ways to do it, but we just want a simplified way. So the general idea now is we want to ensure that when we go ahead and select a particular category, it's going to filter for us accordingly, and that's when we're going to add in the HTMX for that. Now with sports here, what I want to do is add an adjustment. So this is in our div. Let's put this outside and see the effect. Okay, yeah, now it's better within. So just a bit of tinkering on my side. Okay, so we've got that all set up as we want to. You can also change the heading size, and that's something I may want to do while I'm at it. H5, I can change that to 6. Okay, so there's, I just need to change that one as well. Okay, not much on adjustment. So I'm just going to go to more tools, developer tools, and if there's anything that needs to be cached, I'm just going to empty cache and hard reload. And hard reload. Okay, there's not much of a difference really there. So I haven't got into detail here with the properties here, so I'll just leave it as is, it's fine. So you can just go ahead and tinker this on your own time. Okay, so we now have everything that we wanted now. So we have the Tailwind CSS, so it looks a bit nicer, and we have the spacing we need. So the next aspect that we'll focus on is add in the filtering aspect. So when we click on one of these buttons here, we just want a short animation here to appear when we're clicking on it to show that it's been clicked on, and then we want the filtering to happen on this page here, so we can see if I click ball, I only see football, rugby and cricket. If I click soccer, of course that's just going to show football, so that is going to be unique for just football. Ball will show football, rugby and cricket. Then of course endurance is just going to show marathon, cycling and triathlon, and if I click racket it will show tennis and badminton. Okay, so that's what we have for now. And the next thing we'll do is we'll add in HTMX. Hi everyone, and welcome back. So now what we want to do is we want to filter our sports list by the tags that we have set up here. So when a user clicks a tag on a tag/button, it's then going to filter out according to the associated tag, as you can see down below them. Now, the easiest way to go on ahead and do this is to use HTMX driven filtering, so we don't need to go on ahead and reload the entire page. So let's go on ahead and get started. So we can go to our views.py file, and I'm just going to zoom out here. So what we want to do first of all is I want to import get object or 404, so that's either going to retrieve an object or show 404, and that's going to be part of Django shortcuts here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say get underscore object underscore or underscore 404, just like that. Okay, so we've got that set up. Now we want to create a new view here, so I'm going to do just that. Okay, and we're going to call this filter underscore sports would be the view name, and we're going to pass through request, and we're also going to go ahead and pass through tag ID. Okay, and that's going to ensure that our URL is going to be dynamic. So I'm going to pass through a tag ID to know which tag it will be. Okay, so tag ID will come from the URL, so we'll filter according to the ID. So if the ID is 1, that will be that particular tag. For 2, another tag, 3, etc. And essentially, we want to set everything up in that fashion. Okay, so what we want to now do is we're going to go ahead and say tag equals get underscore object underscore or underscore 404, and that pertains to what we went ahead and imported here. And within that, we want to have a parameter which is going to specify the tag model, and then the ID is going to be according to tag ID based on what's put into the URL. So essentially what we are doing here is we want to find the tag object with the designated ID in the URL, or we're going to return 404 if it doesn't exist. Okay, great. Next, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and say sports equals sport.objects.filter, and we're going to say tags equals tag. and then we're going to fetch the related tags. Tags, there we go. So essentially what we are doing now is we're going to get all sports that have that particular tag that's matched, and we're going to prefetch their tags, and that's going to make it, as I mentioned before, it makes it a lot more efficient to get it automatically for us beforehand. Okay. Next thing that we want to go ahead and do is we just want to render a particular template. So for now we can just say return render, and we'll say request. And I'll leave that blank for now. And then we can just pass through in a context dictionary. So I'm going to put the context, oh, excuse me, why am I doing that? Well, we're just going to put it in directly here, and it's going to be sports as the key that we'll be able to access. And then the value, of course, is just going to be sports here. So we're just putting the context dictionary here, and we need a particular template here. So I'm going to create a new one in template. So I'll right click, say new, and this is just going to be called sports_list.html. Okay, and that's going to be utilized. So sports_list.html, and that's where we're going to be able to access everything here. It's going to be on this sports_list.html page. Okay, then we want to create that Django URL for filtering. So remember, we're passing over a tag_ID here, and that needs to match a URL pattern here that we have in our CRM app. So here where we have our pass, what we can do is we can just say filter / and then it's going to be an integer. So we can say int as the placeholder, tag_ID, and we can close those angle brackets like that. Oh, and I realize we're doing it for the base one, so let me put this here and leave this as home. And then this can just change to the view which we defined, which is filter_sports, filter_sports, just like that. Okay. Now what I also like to do is just add in a name option as well. So I usually leave that as a blank field here for the first one. And for the second one here, it's just going to be the same name as the view. So filter_sports. All right, there we go. So excuse me, I was copying over the default one we had. So there we have it. So make sure that you have this set. So when we set up HTMX, it's going to filter according to the tag that we have set, and we're going to pass through that tag ID, and that's going to go ahead and execute this view, which is going to perform the following that we just mentioned earlier on. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to move the sports list, you could say, into this template that we'll define here, sportslist.html. So that is the next thing that we want to go ahead and do. So let's go ahead and do just that. So let's just zoom in a bit. So we have that URL defined now. We have that view defined as well. So all we need to do is go to index.html, and what we want to do here is we want to move what we've defined here earlier for this entire list of everything that we're working with. So all of the sports here that we have, all the way to the end right here with end 4. So we can just copy this all the way here. We can copy it, make sure you don't remove it, and we can add it into sports list. We can just go ahead and move that back. So we have that now into our template. And then we want to add in HTMX. So let's go to our index.html file. And what we're going to do is update our buttons first of all. So our buttons are here. And all we're going to do is right next to type here, we're going to first of all say hx-get, and we're going to set this in curly braces. We're going to set the URL, which is going to be filter. Okay, and let's go ahead and check what we set that as. So we've just got filter right here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that everything is linking correctly. So essentially what you can actually do is, let me go back. is you don't need to necessarily add it as filter like here. You can just directly refer to the name, which is filter_sports. So usually what I'll do is I'll put in the URL name, but what you can also do is just refer to the name here itself if you don't want to look at the URL and micromanage it. So what I'm going to do is just put filter_sports, just like that, according to what we have here as the name. And that's a very good, useful way if you want to refer to a particular URL. You can just add in that name option, and then you can just go ahead and just refer to it. Okay, so we have that set up now, and then we want to pass through the tag.id. And then make sure you add the percentage symbol here. So that is what we are setting up here accordingly. So with this line of code, hx-get, okay, we're calling a Django view to filter sports by tag. Okay. Then we want to add the target. So we want to update only the sports list. So we need to add in an ID here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put a div around everything that we've defined here. So what I'm going to set here is a div, say div ID, and we're just going to set that as sports-list. And then we can just encapsulate this. And there we go. So it's going to update only the sports list itself. And then we want to swap the text that is going to be shown here. Okay, and that's going to be the content. So let's go back to where we were. Here we are. So let's just set the target now. So hx-target. Okay, equals, and we set that, we will refer to that as the hyphen. So this is going to be the ID, so sports-list. So that's going to refer to whatever you name the ID here. Okay, and then we want to know where to swap. So we'll say hx-swap, and we can just set that as inner HTML. So that's going to replace the content. And there we have it. Now, the last thing that you want to do is just ensure that you've added in HTMX. So all you want to do is add that here at the top. So we want to add in the script. So the script here, the source is going to be https://unpkg.com/ and then htmx.org. And we'll put 1.6.0. Right, there we go. And then you want to close that script. Right, there we go. So that's just going to allow us to make use of HTMX. All right, so make sure that you have that in place and that it is good to go. Okay, so we have all of that set. Let's restart our server. Okay, we've got that done. Okay, and now let's just refresh our page. And let's say racket. And now you can see we've got that filtering all on the one page. So it's, of course, showing tennis and badminton. Endurance. Soccer shows the one. Ball, we can see shows all of the three. And if we just refresh, it's going to go back to the default. Now, of course, you can add in another button that just reloads the page as is, and it will do just what you want. But there we have it. Now, there are some nuances I do want to add here. So we have inner HTML, but what I do prefer is to rather use text content. It's a lot safer in my opinion. So I do want to make that adjustment. And let's just refresh and racket. You can see it works better. It's just a lot safer, I would say. And we can see everything is working as it should be still. Okay, perfect, great. Now, what we can also do is just change the color when we are selecting something. So for example, if I choose racket, you can see here it's kind of static-y. I want it to just have a little bit of a nice effect. So when I actually select the button itself, it goes on ahead and it changes to like a green color. So that is something that I want us to go on ahead and add in. So let's make that adjustment. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so here we have our button class. So we want to look for active. So let's scroll here across. Okay. Okay, so here we have active primary 600. So I want to go ahead and change this. So let me put in danger. So I'm not sure if it has the, so the coloring might, yeah, let's reload now. Okay, so it's not danger. So it has to be red then. So it probably goes by color scheme. There we go. All right, so I got confused there. With Bootstrap, of course, success is green, danger is red. And of course, the primary kind of threw me off here. So red, yeah. So that's going to do it. So there we have a nice event here, just changing what the color is based on what was active and what was selected. So we can see we've got ball, soccer, endurance, racket, and there we have it. As you can see, everything is done for us with HTMX now. A little bit of Tailwind sprinkled in, and we've got everything that we need to filter what we want. All right, so there we have it. That is how we can go ahead and ensure that we have filtering in place. And that's quite a lot of technologies involved. So Django Taggit, that's how you can add tags to your models. That's how you can, of course, utilize Tailwind CSS, specifically Tailwind elements, and also how you can integrate HTMX as well. Now, this code, of course, is quite a lot. So I will be sure to add it in the repository. So I will be sure to add that in the description for you so you can directly go ahead and access it. So yeah, that's it guys for this video tutorial. As always, thank you for the support and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.